Hello, I'm Doug, and welcome to the Krewe of Japan podcast, a weekly podcast where we take you on audio journeys through Japanese culture.
This time on Krewe of Japan podcast.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today we're diving into a love story. No, not a romance story exactly, but maybe the longest, most committed relationship in modern pop culture history. Because if there's one thing Japan loves, like really loves, it's robots. From Astro Boy rocketing across TV screens in the post-war years, to towering Gundam suits, cyborg heroes, and mecha pilots screaming their attack names at the sky. Robots have never just been a background prop in Japan. They've been heroes, protectors, partners. While Western pop culture tends to picture killer AI, robot uprisings, and Skynet ruining everyone's weekend, Japan keeps imagining something a little different. Coexistence. Less Terminator, more teamwork. And that imagination didn't stay on the page or the screen. It spilled out into the real world, into humanoid bots like ASIMO and Pepper, into automation avatars, all these quiet everyday ways technology just sort of lives alongside people across Japan. Sci-fi, but make it normal. So to help us unpack the roots of Japan's fascination with robots, we're joined by a friend, unofficial Krewe of Japan co-host, official Pure Tokyo Scope co-host, author, cultural deep dive extraordinaire, and honestly, our go-to pilot for this giant robot of a topic, Matt Alt. In this jam-packed episode, full of robot talk spanning time and space, we explore how pre- and post-war media turned robots into heroes instead of threats.
There's a really famous one called Tanku Tankuro, which is a very famous manga in the pre-war era. And Tanku Tankuro he looked kind of like a billiard ball with holes in it. And like he could pop things out of them. Like he always had a head on top, but like he could retract his arms in and like put out wings or put out guns or put out, rakes or like whatever he needed to do. So there was this idea, robots were definitely part of the Japanese pop cultural consciousness way before Astro Boy in 1963, way before World War II.
The rise of giant mecha and why bigger is always better.
Kaneda Shotaro would use Gigantor to do that. And that set the stage for giant robots. And that led to, there's a bunch of 60s sort of giant robot characters that are in there, so many of which are by Yokoyama himself, like Babel II has this big robot called Poseidon in it. But it wasn't until the early 1970s that the idea of putting a human pilot in really took off.
How those pop culture fantasies quietly shaped Japan's very real-world tech ambitions.
There's lots of testimonials of Japanese engineers who said that they were interested in getting into computers or robotics because of like Astro Boy and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure, the first to really invent a working bipedal humanoid robot were like Japanese researchers.
And so much more. So whether you're an avid Gunpla enthusiast, grew up on Power Rangers and late night anime blocks on TV, or just robot curious, buckle up because this episode's for you. And before we go into full power for our interview, a quick heads up. My audio glitches a little bit here and there, so if I sound slightly robotic at times, just consider it an immersive world-building experience. So with that out of the way, now it's time to strap in and go full blast into our interview with Matt Alt. Let's go. Are you new to the Krewe? Yokoso! We hope you enjoy this episode. If you like what you hear today, then you'll really love our back catalog of episodes from earlier this season and previous seasons. We've had some incredible guests, like author Matt Alt uncovering the history of Nintendo, Godzilla guru Dr. William Tsutsui breaking down the evolution of Godzilla, actor Shotaro Yasuda discussing his role in Super Sentai and Kamen Rider, and so much more. After you finish up this episode, hit that subscribe button or follow or whatever it is, and get notified when new episodes come out. Then while you wait for the new episode to drop, play catch up with the Krewe. But before you do any of that, let's dive into today's episode. All right, so we are back with our unofficial co-host, Matthew Alt.
That's right. I was here day one, or day zero, as they say, wasn't I, for the very first Krewe of Japan podcast?
It was the first one, and then like every season pretty much, I think we have to have a Matt Alt episode.
Exactly.
I pop up like a transforming robot or something. It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're our fun uncle. that brings all the robot
Oh, I
toys.
love that analogy.
I'm the wacky uncle who comes bearing toys. So here I am.
So how you been doing, man?
I've been good. It's Tokyo has finally cooled off. We're recording this in early November, and Tokyo, which the summer continues now almost all the way up to November. Summer has broken, and we are definitely into an autumn kind of mode. So we've been enjoying the cool weather.
Yeah, it's been relatively cool here too, which is
Odd.
yeah, it's stayed cool for like a week and a half, and I'm scared. Like, is hell freezing over? Like, what's going on?
What is New Orleans like equivalent to latitude wise? Like, I know Tokyo is equivalent to like Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina, I think, in terms of that. Are you more like a Kyushu type situation?
Probably. We're 90-30 is like our latitude, longitude, approximate.
Right.
So wherever the hell that is, whatever that latitude
exactly,
is.
Yeah.
But I think it would probably be close to Kyushu, somewhere in that
Something
area,
like that.
if I could guess.
I mean, it's pretty warm even in the winter when we go down there. So
yeah, it was warm when you were here. When you guys were here was that last year or was that 2 years ago?
I think that was 2 years ago we visited. Yeah,
flew by, man. Yeah, it was pretty warm. I feel like it was like t-shirt
definitely.
and light jacket.
Definitely, I can't even imagine what it's like in the summer down there. But
you live in Tokyo, you know exactly what New Orleans feels like in the summer.
Exactly. Well, New Orleans is like, I feel like there's like this. It's got to be the city with the strongest connection to Japan, historically speaking. So Lafcadio, all of that.
Was it Takamine?
Takamine, yeah, Jokichi Takamine of whiskey fame. Yes, the cotton exposition of 1880 something. I don't know when
84?
like Japan 84, I think it was when Japan was like the big exhibitor there. Yeah, when New Orleans was the big port that all of the Japanese ships came to.
Yeah.
So yes, but we're not here to talk about cotton, are we, or whiskey?
Yeah.
Although as great as these topics are,
we went from meteorology to history, and now let's go to the main topic of today.
The topic of today:
cold hard steel.
This is going to be the title of the episode, guys. I haven't told y'all yet. It's going to be Find Someone Who Loves You Like Japan Loves Robots, featuring Matt Alt.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's a great title. Actually, it's funny. When I was a kid, and the thing that triggered my interest in Japan as a very little kid, this must have been around 5-6 years old, was a Japanese robot toy. And I remember, thinking, man, there's this country out there that loves robots just as much as I do. I got to get there. I got to get over there. So it's an appropriate title.
I mean, Japan, like you said, has a long-standing fascination with robots. It's just in general, but in pop culture especially, whether it was Astro Boy or Gundam or Macross or Jumbo Machinders, your favorites right there, Mazinger Z, all those guys in between. And we'll get to those in a bit. But
what's the occasion? Why now? I have some thoughts on this. I have some reasons I'm imagining. But
I listen to you guys' podcast way too much.
Oh, were you listening to me and Patrick Macias on the Pure Tokyo Scope podcast going nuts about Grandizer? It's his 50th anniversary in 2025, and that's a big year for a lot of like anime, for robots, Japanese pop culture in general.
To be honest, this is something we've been workshopping for a while. And
we've had this cooking for a while. Yeah, especially like when news came out, like all of like the Gundams that are in like Tokyo were like starting to move around, and then like all like the new technology that's coming out. Sure. Yeah.
Well, you don't have to sell it to me. Robots are always on the menu at Matt Alt's house.
So why do you think then robots captured the Japanese imagination so strongly? Like, what is the driving force, especially like post-war?
I actually think it's inseparable from some pre-war elements too. Like, number one to me, and I'm somebody who's probably thought way too much about this. If you actually ask Japanese people, they're going to be like, what? But I think the real roots of it extend back to the fact that there's like a cultural tradition of deep respect toward your tools and like the things around you. And if you have ever visited a Japanese temple or sometimes shrine, you can see these memorials to all sorts of tools that have helped us. There's like a memorial to eyeglasses. There's memorials to knives. There's really famously a memorial to needles, sewing needles, where you're supposed to bring your old sewing needles and stick them in a block of tofu that they provide for you. They've been working so hard for you to like sew your clothes for so many years. Now you're giving them this soft resting place. And all of this comes from the fact that Japan is a really polytheistic, animistic sort of traditional spiritual worldview where anything in the world around you could have a spirit and everything, needed to kind of be appreciated. So I think that colors Japan's approach to technology in a way that's very different from where you see in the West in things like Frankenstein, scientists gone too far, the machines are replacing us, all of that sort of thing. So I think that's a big reason pre-war. There's also reasons post-war too, and leading up to that, but that's a really big one.
Okay.
I also think that Japan didn't have an industrial revolution in the way that the West did, where you saw these factories and these machines replacing workers in that kind of Victorian sort of era. It was already technology was already getting scary. In Japan didn't have any sort of industrial technology until the Westerners opened the ports in the 1800s. And then it was this rapid game of catch up. We have to quickly modernize. And they did. Japan modernized more rapidly, I think, than any other country on the planet. They went from feudalism in the 1850s to defeating like a major Western power in a battle at sea in 1905. Like they had already gotten to the point where they were sort of on equal footing with the West that way in just 50 odd years. It's crazy.
Yeah, they fast tracked it, huh?
Oh, yeah, they've really bootstrapped it, fast-tracked it, however you want to look at it. So, you have that kind of historical background where technology is what helped Japan get to the future or get caught up, and where you had this view that the tools that humans make and surround themselves with aren't scary. They're things that help us. So you have those two big differences between the West, I think.
Interesting. And I never really thought about it like machine or like scientific manipulations of humans or whatever, right. Always were with a negative or horror light in like Western depictions, right? Whereas, we talked about Astro Boy a second ago, and that's more post-war, obviously.
Sure.
He was like, the boy of the future,
right.
Like kind of like a shining light, looking forward.
Tetsuon Atom, which was broadcast in the West famously as Astro Boy in the 1960s. And that was, by the way, the first anime. Like, of course, Japan had made animations before then. They'd made like animated movies and even like animated shorts that had been broadcast on TV. But Astro Boy was the very first full-length, program length, which is to say 30 minutes or whatever that is, minus commercials, produced in Japan, domestically produced animated TV series. And Tezuka Osamu famously called it anime to distinguish it from imported animation, stuff like the Flintstones or Popeye, which was really huge at the time. Anyway, yeah, Astro Boy is the kind of great granddaddy of the modern sorts of robots we know. But there's actually examples of robot characters pre-war too. There's a really famous one called Tanku Tankuro, which is a very famous manga in the pre-war era. And Tanku Tankuro he looked kind of like a billiard ball with holes in it. And like he could pop things out of them. Like he always had a head on top, but like he could retract his arms in and like put out wings or put out guns or put out, rakes or like whatever he needed to do. So there was this idea, robots were definitely part of the Japanese pop cultural consciousness way before Astro Boy in 1963, way before World War II. In fact, the world's first robot toy was made by Japanese people in the late 1930s. It's a tin toy. It's a wind-up tin toy called the Lilliput, like Lilliputian, I guess. And the Lilliput robot is now like this hugely collectible thing, but it was designed by Japanese people. It was actually made in Manchukuo, occupied China, which is very much a sign of the times. But it was the first robot toy. And so I think it's really telling. The Japanese made the world's first robot toy. So there's this history there. There's a huge history to robots in Japan.
Well, and I feel like it's still continuing because you were talking about how Japan has depicted robots to where they're almost like friendly protectors. And I feel like that's still resonating today because like you have series like Gundam where they're using like these military robot machines for any kind of human conflict that they may have. And then like you have Evangelion who, you have these guardian protectors defending humanity against, the invaders. So I feel like that gives the whole relationship between technology and power and how you're saying like they are using robots in this way of being protectors for the people.
Or augmenters. Do you know what I mean? It's like how technology augments us. It's how it makes us better and stronger as opposed to weakens us or replaces us, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing. Gundam is famously, it's its own thing, but Yoshiyuki Tomino was influenced by American sci-fi, specifically Starship Troopers. which we now associate Starship Troopers mainly with Paul Verhoeven's 90s satire, dark satire, which is a great movie, but it lacks the thing that inspired the Japanese, which is powered suits, powered armor. In Starship Troopers, the book, the eponymous Starship Troopers are wearing these exoskeletons, these mechanical, high-tech, robot-like suits that they use to wage their battles and things like that. And that, I think, really appealed to Japanese people. I mean, Japan has always been fascinated with these tools, right? And tools that make us better, faster, stronger, so to speak. So there was always a fascination with cars, with planes. And so I think the idea of a wearable robot, which is basically what a powered suit is in the Heinleinian tradition, and really what Gundam is. It's a giant, you're riding in it, it's so big you don't wear it, but it's basically you, but bigger, with awesome, weapons and abilities and like cool colors and stuff. But it's basically you. Like, otherwise, why not make Gundam look like a space shuttle with guns on it? They make him look like a human. He looks like us.
Yeah. I feel like they got so many different series like that too, that basically they're not Gundam, but they're kind of like, Escaflowne is like one of the ones that comes to mind for me. Like growing up, that was big on TV when I was a kid.
If you're going to take the conversation in that direction, we should probably talk about there's genres of this sort of thing. And like Astro Boy started the kind of robots in anime, but he was really quickly followed by a rival manga character called Tetsujin 28, which was broadcast in the US as Gigantor. And it's by a manga artist named Mitsuteru Yokoyama, who was a very popular manga artist of the era. And Gigantor is a giant robot. He is a big robot. The story goes that he was invented by the Japanese in the waning years of World War II, but never used as a kind of super weapon. And he's controlled by remote control. So he's like a drone, basically, in modern way of thinking. And the hero of the story, whose name is Kaneda Shotaro, is a kid. He's like a boy detective, and he has control of Gigantor. And he can use this like mechanical control device, a remote control device, to use Gigantor to help him solve crimes. It's kind of like Knight Rider. Like in Knight Rider, every crime involves a car. In Gigantor, every crime involves robots. And so Kaneda Shotaro would use Gigantor to do that. And that set the stage for giant robots. And that led to, there's a bunch of 60s sort of giant robot characters that are in there, so many of which are by Yokoyama himself, like Babel II has this big robot called Poseidon in it. But it wasn't until the early 1970s that the idea of putting a human pilot in really took off. And actually, before that, Osamu Tezuka had a alien robot character called Garon that featured like a little kid driving a robot-like thing, but it was more like an alien kind of artifact. In 1972, you get this thing called Mazinger Z, which is by a artist named Go Nagai, who was recently awarded he was given an award by the imperial household for his contributions to Japanese culture.
Wow.
So giant robots, save Japan, save the world. And Mazinger Z kicked off this absolutely huge craze for super robots, which are kind of superhero-like characters driving giant robots. I'm sure you have seen many of these. Get a Robo, there's like Grandizer, which is a huge thing. I mean, there's literally, there were like dozens of them on the air by the late 70s, so many of them. And many of those were imported to the States as Shogun Warriors when I was a kid. That was the first robot toys I saw. So you had those. And then that gave way in the late 70s to Gundam came around, Yoshiyuki Tomino's Gundam, and that kicked off a craze for what are known as real robots, which are the super robots are very superheroic, super powered, more fantastic. The real robots are supposed to be grounded in reality, gritty reality of the space operatic warfare type thing. Very influenced by Star Wars in a lot of ways and other things. And that the 80s were dominated by real robot shows. So first you have this kind of proto giant robots, then super robots, then real robots, which overlap with transforming robots. That was like a big thing in the 80s, as I'm sure we're going to get into. So those are our genres. Those are our genres. And then you kind of have the whole post-robot stuff, which is Evangelion. Yeah. So, yeah. Are we clear on the timeline?
On the timeline
of
robots.
That was a good overview of the genre timeline for robots.
You need that. We need that. If we lost most of the listeners by this point, but that is the timeline. That is the kind of genre timeline.
So back in season 3, you and I, we actually sat down with Gene Pelk, who was Marvel's man in Japan. It was his title. And he was one of the masterminds behind a lot of the live action robots. So we've been talking about animated up until this point. He was one of the guys that was mastermind behind the Japanese Spider-Man.
So yeah, the other place robots are deeply associated with in Japanese pop culture are the Sentai shows, which, are later got localized into the Power Ranger type shows. And the first Sentai shows, as we learned with Gene, as we were on that episode, that was just 5 heroes, fighting 5 bad guys or 1 bad guy or whatever, kind of action type show. But Gene was in Japan because he believed that he could sell American comic book properties to Japanese publishers. And it turned out that wasn't the case, but that Toei and other broadcast companies were interested in turning them into live action shows. There was just one catch. Every time they wanted to import a Marvel show, the sponsor, a company called Popey, which is now known as Bandai, insisted on putting a giant robot in so that they could sell it as merchandise to the kids. And Gene didn't have any problem with this. Stan Lee didn't have any problem. Okay, put a giant robot in, and that's where we get the spectacle of Spider-Man fighting giant monsters, piloting this giant robot. And it turned out that was so popular that shifted the Sentai shows too. They started putting giant robots in all the Sentai shows. So now it's the Power Rangers. We all now know, the Power Rangers, every episode comes to a climax with them climbing into some giant robot and beating the hell out of another giant robot or a giant kaiju or what have you.
The first thing that popped into mind for transforming robots was, for me, Power Rangers growing up as a kid, but also just Super Sentai in general. That was kind of the standard line that drives, maybe not the first few seasons, but pretty much, I think it's season 3 onward. Every single series had that Gattai robot set, and then all the, the extra pieces that come along the way halfway through the episodes and stuff. But yeah, that was such a big thing. And I think a driving piece in pushing robots. But how do you think the introduction of these live action robots through Gene's influence with Toei, him partnering with Shotaro Ishinomori, Stan Lee, all those guys, when they came together and made these robots come to life on big screen, how do you think that influenced people's ideas of technology and then the future? You're living in the future now because you've seen these massive robots on the screen.
I think it shows a couple of things. One is just how much of a kind of ping pong ball of culture is going back and forth across the Pacific. You have the Americans influencing the Japanese, whether it's Robert Heinlein's books, whether it's Star Wars, whether it's Stan Lee, and Steve Ditko and who are the Spider-Man creators and all of that. The Japanese were absorbing stuff from abroad like a sponge. And that was true when they were industrializing too, of course. They're bringing in all of these German industrialists, American industrialists, French specialists. So they were absorbed from the West and then kind of transform that into their own, no pun intended, into their own stuff, right? And so you saw that continuing in the pop cultural mode. Even though Astro Boy is really its own thing, Tezuka was deeply influenced by Walt Disney and American superhero comics. And he has specifically said that Popeye is one of the biggest influences on him because Popeye is always transforming. He eats spinach and his arms turn into pistons or something like that. Popeye was a huge, huge influence on Japanese creators in that era. And I think that influenced probably Ishimori too. And the morphing of the Power Rangers, they don't do it in a cartoony way. They have to use props and stuff. They power up. They don't have spinach, but they have their morphin moment. You know what I mean? Whatever their gimmick of the show is.
The pen, the sword, the pen.
Yes, exactly. Only in Power, the sword is always mightier than the pen in Power Rangers. And the giant robot's even mightier than the sword. So
between that and Ultraman too, they have just the weirdest henshin devices, a pair of glasses, who was it, 7? I think
7 had that. Well, the trick was, and when I talked to old toy makers and old content producers, the earliest trick was that you had to do something that kids could easily imitate. So the kind of dance move that Kamen Rider does, where he swings his arms around, or raising your glasses to your face, or what have you, these had to be things that kids could easily copy because, especially in the early era of Japanese character toys, the main toys were dress up or prop type things. The idea of a character as an avatar that you could play with as an action figure didn't come in until later. So the morphing, as it were, is usually pretty simple because it has to be something kids can do. If it's really complicated, they're not going to remember it. It's just not going to resonate with them. So this is why you have 7-year-olds running around the house, karate chopping, kicking, morphing. You know what I mean? It's it's easy for kids to remember. So and that was actually true of the super robots too.
Then you can sell more merch.
Well, that's the thing. This is all a capitalist enterprise. All of this stuff was we think of this, Westerners just got this stuff as shows a lot of the time. Like, we didn't have the full media mix as it's known, but it was all designed to sell products. If it sold products, it was a success. If it didn't sell products, it was an abject failure. Nobody was like, the themes in this are really, really quite something. It was always like, did we sell enough? Oh, nope, we didn't sell enough Gundams. You're canceled, which is what actually happened to Gundam in the very first run. They weren't selling enough toys, so the show got canceled. Only the good die young, I guess. So, it's all directly connected. There's a lot of layers here. You're looking at this in terms of culture. You're looking at this in terms of modernization. You're looking at this in terms of storytelling. You're looking at this in terms of kids culture, product, merchandising, cross-cultural things. So it's a rich field. Somebody should write a book about this.
I know, right? I wonder who could do that.
Yeah, who could do that? Who could do that? Just me ranting about robots for 200 pages. Somebody will probably buy it.
I mean, technically all books are just ranting about something.
This is true, yes.
So do you think there were any actual influences that some kid or some people saw these live action robots in the 70s and were like, I'm going to make a robot? Do you think that actually influenced any individuals to kind of push forward on some of those things?
There's lots of testimonials of Japanese engineers who said that they were interested in getting into computers or robotics because of Astro Boy and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure, the first to really invent a working bipedal humanoid robot were Japanese researchers. Honda released this thing called ASIMO in the late 90s, I believe, is when it first came out. And it's interesting. They've had rings run around them by Chinese and American robotics companies in the recent years. In my mind, the reason for that isn't because of a lack of vision. It's because Japan lacks a military industrial complex. And those humanoid robots are, regardless of what the companies are telling you, oh, they're for stacking things in warehouses. Oh, they're for vacuuming your living room. No, they're soldiers. They're meant for war. That's the only reason that these companies are getting money for these things. And putting aside whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I personally think humanoid killing machines is a bad thing, but it's just me, I guess. But it's just a fact. Japan lacks, I know it's so weird, right? But Japan lacks a military industrial complex, in the way that the West does, the America, France, the Soviet/Russian, China obviously has one. Without that, it's really tough to kind of commercialize these sorts of things. So ASIMO fell by the wayside. Toyota had one too for a little while. It played a trumpet.
Yeah, he played the trumpet. I got to see him live.
And it's funny, you see that the American and the Chinese ones are doing all sorts of crazy stuff like breakdancing or fist fighting. All these, you see the videos posted online, but it's the Japanese kind of alpha and omega was walking and then trumpet playing. So
and not to go completely off the rails, but I saw something the other day about, I think it was somewhere in Europe, they are selling $20,000 home assistant robots. Yeah. They do chores around your house, fold your laundry, go and take care of stuff. They take orders. Neo or something like that. I forget.
I'm pretty sure the trick about those is that they're actually teleoperated. I think it's Chinese. It's a Chinese company making it, but it's people in Eastern Europe or somewhere are actually operating the robots, wearing virtual reality goggles and teleoperated, hand motion detectors or whatever. And to me, it's I don't want some random person in my house, watching me use the bathroom or whatever the hell these robots are going to be like. They're robots, right? They're going to be all over your house. So
what if they were physically in the robot?
Exactly. That's fine. Iron Man. I don't know whether that's better or worse. But it's funny you bring up Iron Man because when those movies came out, I think the dam really broke on that was a huge bridge with Japanese content because so much Japanese content involved people in kind of powered suits or humans augmented or cyborgs and things like that. And in the West, you had the $6 Million Man in the 70s and then nothing for a really long time. And in Japan, you had all sorts of $6 Million Man, bionic woman, we can work with this. And there's tons of cyborg/human augmented stuff that happened after that. But we didn't really get that until Iron Man hit, I think, in the West, is my feeling.
Yeah. Well, I feel I was going to actually jump to one other thing, but then now that you brought up the cyborgs, we had cyborg 009, Kamen Rider Kikaider. I feel like those are, like you said, those are around forever. And even Ghost in the Shell was like popular here.
Well, Ghost in the Shell is like the sequel to the Bionic Woman. It's amazing. It's like, it obviously takes direct, like, okay, if you can build a human with these robotic parts, at what point does that person stop being a person? Like, you've replaced everything, right, except maybe a couple pieces of the brain. So that, like, they were already kind of on this, way out there frontier of exploring this in the late, that was in the 80s, actually. The manga came out in the mid-late 80s.
Yeah. And when did the anime come out? It was in the 90s, right?
90s, I believe it was.
Yeah. But no, Matt, you have all these anime pursuing all these different things with the robots. And yet in Japanese society and real world robotics, we were talking about how like the robots are playing trumpets. And then you have like SoftBank's Pepper and,
yes.
These like really friendly, technological curiosities, I like to call it. And is robotics being driven beyond that now in Japan?
It's interesting because Japan really sort of lost out in a lot of ways when humanity made the transition from things to software. Like basically after the iPhone came out and every phone was just a featureless black rectangle and it didn't matter what the object was anymore. It was the apps that you used on it or produced for it. Japan really lost kind of an edge that it had. But now that like they're saying the frontier of, and they missed out on social media. They missed out on algorithms. They missed out on generative AI. They missed out on a lot of these technologies that we sort of see as the cutting edge abroad. The flip side of that is they also missed out on all of the chaos these things have sown in Western societies. But let's put that aside for a second. They're saying that the next frontier of AI is embedding AI into robotic bodies. And it would not shock me at all if Japan picked the ball back up and started making super cute, as opposed to the really quite terrifying, as far as I've seen it, home robot assistants that we're getting from foreign companies. Because this is where you can see this intersection of, I can imagine, I'm just imagining here, this intersection of Japanese comfort with technology and like kawaii culture. And I think that realistically, the home robots that are going to be the most popular in the future are not going to look like C-3PO or look like the Terminator. They're going to look like some kind of like R2-D2 / version of like Pikachu. Or something like that. They're going to be fun.
But I feel like Japan is almost there, honestly, if we're talking about that. Because like you have these like robot cafes and robot hotels that right now are just drawing tourism. I mean, is it just a gimmick or is there a deeper meaning to it?
Again, it's this comfort, I think, with technology here that is different than the comfort level you get with technology abroad. Whether this is going to hold, whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, I don't make any value judgment. It just is. And like Japanese have an affinity for robots, I think you can say. They, in all sorts of ways, they think about them too much. It's like Japan didn't invent robots. Japan didn't invent cars. Why did Japan invent cars that transform into robots? Planes that transform into robots? It's because people were thinking about this so much here. And also, just as a side thing, I honestly think there's this whole tradition of morphing and transforming creatures in Japanese folklore. Tanuki that transform into teapots or things like that. So the idea that something could transform into something else, or even an organic thing into an inorganic thing, or an inorganic thing from the start into a different one, that was already really embedded in Japanese folklore. And I think it's really telling that the Transformers in Japan weren't marketed as More Than Meets the Eye or Decepticons or anything like that. They were called chameleon toys that would hide. They would trick you. Oh, you think it's a little toy car, but look, it actually is a robot. And that trickiness was kind of yokai-like. It wasn't tricky in the sense of like, ooh, you're dead or something like that. It was like, ooh, gotcha. So there's a sense of play running through a lot of Japanese culture, not just pop culture, but culture in general, this playfulness. And I think robots exemplify that. It's a technology with a human face on it. Robots are technology that literally looks like us. So there's probably no better way of personifying technology than a robot, like just in general. So maybe that's why there's so much of an affinity for them here. There's so many cultural supports for it.
So is Bumblebee a yokai?
He kind of is. The Transformers all are. They're like they transform from one thing into another to trick you, to hide from you. Bumblebee looks like a car, right? And like, I thought they handled that really well in the first Transformers movie where the Beef, as we call him, Shia LaBeouf, is like, he doesn't know that Bumblebee is like a robot, and like kind of Bumblebee is sort of like messing with him. That's very yokai-like. So, oh my God, you're a robot. How many times has this happened in folklore, except it's not a robot, or you're a tanuki or a kappa or a tengu or something like that.
Huh.
Yeah.
That link, that folklore, I think is actually kind of key to it. The Transformers are funny though, because it's like so few Americans traditionally recognize that show as having anything to do with Japan. It's Marvel came up with the storylines and the characters, even though the toys are all Japanese, the characters are 100% American. So it's an interesting hybrid.
Well, before we leave anime totally behind in this conversation, probably the hardest question we're going to ask you today is which pop culture series, like anime, manga, live action, would you put on a Mount Rushmore of mecha pop culture?
Japanese mecha pop culture? Well, we'd have to put Astro Boy on there. You'd have to put Mazinger Z on there. You'd have to put Gundam on there.
Which Gundam?
The first one, I think. We're talking Mount Rushmore, right?
Oh, not G Gundam?
Not G Gundam. As much as I love it, not Gundam Geek Axe.
For the purpose of this, we're talking about a Mount Rushmore-esque kind of.
If we're talking humanoid robots, see, this is I'm going to go back. See, if we're talking giant robots, it has to be Gigantor, not Astro Boy. Astro Boy's descendant. If you see, you need multiple. There's going to have to be a Mount Rushmore of giant robots. Okay, then there's a second Mount Rushmore, like just down the street. Of humanoid, human-sized robot. That's Astro Boy. Then you'd have like Cyborg 009. You'd have like Kusanagi from Ghost in the Shell. The question is, where does Evangelion fit in this? Is it a robot or is it Shinji's mom? Like, what is it? I love how even in Evangelion, like where getting in this giant robot is actively painful for the kids doing it. It's never portrayed that the technology is bad, only that dad is bad. Dad's the bad guy. The tech is like, we need it. Like, it's never questioned that we need. Yes, of course we need to build giant robots to fight this. It's like, in the Godzilla movies, what's the best way to defeat Godzilla? You build a giant robot Godzilla. Duh. It's the only way, right? So it's never questioned that giant robots are the way through this. So I guess he'd go on the giant robot. Evangelion, or she, I guess, is what Evangelion.
Yeah, I think giant robot.
Yeah, I think so.
I think we have to move it there. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, this is. I get talking about this and I just don't stop.
I'm thinking though, like, would it be like, is there a Mount Rushmore and you can within that each head is like its own Mount Rushmore?
It transforms. It has to or combines. We haven't even touched on combining robots. That was like an offshoot of the super robots of the late 70s where you had like 5 vehicles combined into a giant robot. Like that was its whole thing. But so, but this whole thing is generational. So what were your two, first robot or giant or otherwise Japanese shows? What was it?
Mine were definitely Power Rangers. And I think I wasn't really big into Transformers. I mean, I knew of it. I guess when I was young, I don't know. Power Rangers was the first one that really gripped me.
Power Rangers is my unknowing one, yes.
Yes, there you go. I mean, it was
unknowing.
Huge.
Like, I was watching it, but I didn't know exactly what it was. My first conscious one was Gundam. Wing, to be exact.
That was broadcast 95, 6, 7?
In the mid to late 90s, yeah.
That would be on mine because it was so formative in terms of me getting interested in Japan specifically through like pop culture. Like Power Rangers, I didn't know. Didn't realize, but Gundam Wing definitely played its role. And then it's definitely not Japanese, but like Short Circuit. Can I put Johnny number 5 in there?
Yes, Johnny 5. I mean, with RoboCop, if we're talking about like robots in general, Star Wars was absolutely my formative thing. Star Wars.
Yeah. C-3PO and R2-D2.
C-3PO and R2-D2.
Can you put them together in one head?
Yeah, exactly. Kind of combining. They're kind of like, it's funny. As a kid, I was like dreaming of the day I'd have like AI robots in my house, and now they're here, and I'm like, don't want them in my house. It's kind of funny.
Star Wars, you could argue that Star Wars was so influenced by Japanese culture that, the robots from Star Wars could be derivative of Japan to some extent.
Yeah, well, they certainly, the Star Wars is hugely influenced by like Kurosawa and stuff like that, so there's, Yoda, I think is named after a Japanese guy who Lucas met. He famously went to Japan to study like special effects, what the state of the art in special effects was before making the movie. And then he decided, no, he couldn't use Japanese special effects. He was going to like make his own studio, but
no relation to Hiroko.
No relation to Hiroko. Although she was like, I remember when we were first dating, God, she would be getting like Yoda statues from people all the time, but it's in Japanese. Yoda it's a long vowel. So Japanese don't make this mistake. The Japanese name is Yoda. And then like it's Yoda is the little green guy. So, those long vowels make a big difference. So for me, it was like I was like 5 or 6 when the Shogun Warriors hit, which were obviously Japanese because they had Shogun in the name. And I was like 11 when the Transformers hit in 84, which is like perfect timing for a boy to. But I didn't know they were Japanese for a long time. I put 2 and 2 together after like seeing Made in Japan on the bottom. Although that didn't really mean anything. Everything was made in Japan back then. So yeah, those were big ones for me. But when I was your age, we didn't have anime. They didn't show it on American TV. They only showed a little Robotech. That was a huge one. Robotech.
Yeah.
That was
Voltron.
A huge one. There's still a following for Robotech.
Oh, for sure. I mean, in Japan, it's been continuing.
Cons, yeah.
Macross.
Yep.
Yeah. No, it's great. Those transforming Valkyries, the jets that transformed into robots were like huge. I mean, they were even incorporated into the Transformers line briefly, but that was just huge. I was like 12, 13. I probably should have been like watching baseball or basketball or something, but all I was doing was watching Macross. Which is why I ended up here in Tokyo talking to you guys about robots at age 52 instead of like, I don't know, what do adults know? What do normal 50-year-old people do? I don't know.
Listen, everyone has their own obsessions. It's okay. Whether it's, robots or romance novels or what's the other trending thing going on right now for Doug, sports, but it's very painful.
Well, but that's Japanese influence too. Apparently, the World Series was won by 3 Japanese people.
Oh yeah.
There were also I heard there's some other Americans involved, but yes.
Oh yes.
I loved how you were trying to counsel me there. It's okay, Matt. It's okay to be 50 years old and still in a giant robot.
Okay.
So,
speaking of being 50 years old.
Oh my God, what?
Where is this going? I guess we're going into Grandizer is 50 years old. Is that what you were trying to serve me up this?
No. I was going to swing it back to like real world stuff. We've seen stories about robots in Japan providing medical care for the elderly.
Right.
See how I did this?
Yes. For me, yes. I always, robots take care of me. I'm elderly.
No.
Are you calling him old?
No, I was just saying 50 is on the way to being old.
Oh my God, Jeez. Matt, he's digging your grave already.
You're digging this hole deeper. No, I get what you're saying, but actually, I don't think for a while there were a lot of reports that Japan was making like, humanoid robots. Like they didn't have a military industrial complex, but they had huge healthcare needs. And so they were making robots and also exoskeletons. Like in America, you'd see all these frightening military exoskeletons like coming out. But in Japan, they were all like people lifting sacks of rice or like elderly people from bed into bath or whatever. You don't see that so much anymore. And the reason being because this is hard for a lot of people to wrap their brains around. Japan has really opened its borders to skilled immigrants. And now the healthcare, there's tons of people from the Philippines, from India, Southeast Asia. And it's not just healthcare. Like, most, if not all convenience stores in Tokyo are staffed with at least 1 or 2 foreign people working there.
I've noticed that over the last couple of years when visiting, just, very much more diverse staffing than what I'd seen maybe 10 years ago. So would you consider then, like, how some convenience stores now are doing kind of like a digital avatar of folks that can't get out of their house, they're maybe stuck in their home for whether they're disabled or whatever it may be. They have a digital avatar and that allows them to work in a public setting.
Right, I saw that.
Yeah. Would you consider that robots?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a machine. Do you know what I mean? But it's closer, like it's teleoperated. Its telepresence is the actual was the I don't know what it's called now. That's what it was back when I was younger. But that sort of thing, it could very well be that as the technology gets better, that it really feels like being there. Right now, if you've ever operated one of these things, there's like lag. There's like it's basically like being a Zoom. I hate Zoom meetings. You know what I mean? It's like, why would I want to take a Zoom meeting to go out to the convenience store to buy a beer or whatever it was? I want to get away from my screens. But, of course, this is for people who maybe can't. And if it works for them, that's absolutely great.
Yeah.
I've never seen this actually. So like, it's probably like one place that's testing this or something.
Right. I don't know if it's like widespread yet. I heard it. Yeah. I've heard they're probably test driving it in a couple of locations and whatnot, but it is curious to see how it's going to work out.
Right.
Especially the lag and the latency. If they can get that to be like real time and not have that lag, then it's really could be a game changer for people who can't work.
I think for average people though, Like I've seen robot bartenders, I've seen robot like sushi making stuff. And I think even now, especially perhaps among young people, when they get out, they want like a human analog experience. They don't want more machines and computers and stuff. So it's tough for me to see this really taking off. On the other hand, like, one of the interesting things about Ghost in the Shell that isn't in the movies, but it is in the manga, is that people are basically doing this as like cosmetic surgery. Like cyborg arms and legs and heads have gotten so great that people just like, swap them out. I could totally see this happening if they got good enough. Do you know what I mean? Like people are already doing all sorts of like plastic surgery and things like that. So
like Back to the Future.
Yeah, yes, exactly. It turns out we have bigger fish to fry with like our brains getting melted by social media and AI fake news. Like Star Wars was so great because C-3PO and R2-D2 were on the rebels' side. Now we know if Star Wars were made now, those guys would have, they would be licensed like Imperial droids that would be uploading all of your personal information to the Death Star. So, this is a big reason. If you could have an AI that was totally like self-contained in your house and was your buddy and was like, helping you do stuff, that'd be great. But we know that's not how the technology world works. We are the products for these big companies who are selling our information and data. So, we transitioned away from robots and we transitioned to AI and stuff like that. And it's, this is the scary stuff that it's not really for us. It uses us, and in Japan, because Japan hasn't introduced technologies like that so much or isn't as reliant on them as we are, it hasn't messed up its society to the same extent that the West has. And maybe there's still a love for tech there that there isn't in the West. It's an interesting question, probably for another episode.
Well, then, what are some surprising ways robots are actually being used in Japan right now that most outside observers wouldn't expect?
I guess the biggest way is that every single robot toy is aimed at adults now. Like kids don't buy robot toys, adults do. And like the entire toy market in Japan and robots to me really are, even at their highest tech, kind of an extension of toys. They're playthings. They're designed to kind of amuse us in a lot of ways. Home robots I'm talking about. So that's a big one. More robot toys are sold to, adults than to kids. This is like that famous statistic where like more adults buy diapers in Japan than babies. Like they sell more diapers to adults than they do to babies in Japan because of the demographics. Apparently also because of the demographics, they're selling more robot toys to adults than to kids. So it's another one of those kind of aging society / we're all kidults now sort of thing going on. I actually don't see a lot of examples of robots in Japanese society anymore. Like those Pepper droids that they had at all of like the kind of cell phone places. Most of those were always like offline anyway, whenever I saw them. It turns out that getting robots interacting with people in the real world is a lot harder than anybody thought, which is why they're mainly relegated to pop culture.
I think the only time I really saw like interactive robots and had an interactive robot experience is like Coco's restaurant when you go and like they deliver the food to you, or like you put your food on the tray and they kind of go and then they go back. And that's for the most part the deep extent of what I've seen robotic interactions in Japan.
Yes.
Now I've never.
Do we have, and drones maybe? Like, we're seeing more, are drones robots? They basically are when they're autonomous, I think. So we're seeing a lot of that, but it's, again, in the West, when you develop almost any robotic technology, you are bound to get subsidies from the government, from military companies and things like that keep you afloat. Like there isn't any really customer facing robot that's widely available in the West right now. It's all this stuff that's kind of, they're hoping that Amazon funds them so that they can replace workers, doing heavy lifting, or that the military funds them or whatever. The robots that we actually do see in our houses are mainly transformers and toys and things like that. And for better or for worse, that's just how it is. Turns out those steps are pretty difficult to navigate. How did R2-D2 get up and down stairs? It was never really explained, was it?
Yeah, the little rockets didn't.
Yeah, little rocket. Yeah, just what I want in my house. A bunch of chemical rockets going off every time the robot needs to go upstairs or downstairs.
Or just scream his way up the stairs.
Yeah. Exactly. He probably screams and has to have you pick him up. Actually, that's something I have seen here, which is kind of robots designed to kind of soothe you. Robot toys that are in the shape of a stuffed animal that kind of, there was one shaped like a seal a couple of years ago. I saw another one that's like a ball with a tail on it recently. But actually, this is a really interesting one. I don't know if this counts as a robot, but it is very much overlapping. A couple of weeks ago, Hiroko and I climbed a mountain called Tateyama out in Toyama Prefecture. When we came down, there's like a kind of the base of the mountain is a more tourist area where people who like the mountains but can't or don't want to climb them were. And there was this dude with like a single lens reflex camera that he had stuck an iPhone on top of. And I thought he did it to make the viewfinder bigger, but he kept talking to himself. And I thought, maybe this guy's just like a little bit out there. Maybe he's got, some kind of, thing. We were walking in the same direction and I realized the iPhone was talking back to him. He had ChatGPT or something set up on it, in a female voice that was commenting on all of the stuff he saw around and like cheering him on. Oh, you climbed this far. You're doing really great. Hey, is that a bird? What kind of bird is that? And he was talking to it. So he was like, he had taken ChatGPT out into the field and it was like his waifu and they were totally carrying on a conversation with each other. And is it good, bad? I don't know. Like, it's not something I would do.
Maybe we'll find out in a few years.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it felt like the future. And I still think that Japan might not be at the future of robotics anymore, but I absolutely think Japan is at the cutting edge of how people incorporate consumer technologies into their lives, into their real life. And this guy, is he a lonely guy? Is he like a computer researcher? Is he just a weirdo? I don't know. I don't know. But here was a human being interacting with an AI. The reason he had the cell phone on top of his single lens reflex camera was because it could see what he was taking pictures of. And so literally the thing was, oh, you're at Jigokudani. I can tell from all of the volcanic, vents. I can see where we are. This is amazing. Wow. I can't believe you walked up here. And he's like, yeah, it smells like sulfur. And it's like, yeah, you got to be careful about that. It's like they're having a conversation. This is robotics. This is the future. And this is probably where things are going. But,
well, I feel like it's a great callback to your book, Pure Invention.
Pure Invention? How Japan Made the Modern World, available at a bookseller near you? Yes.
And how there are fantasy delivery systems that are available. And this could be just one example of like it's not really a fantasy delivery system, but it's like,
well, it certainly is if you think there's a girl on the other end. If you think it's a girl you're talking to, that's a fantasy. But yeah, Japan has, again, always been at the forefront of, being a post-industrial, post-realist, whatever, post-everything society. So it doesn't surprise me at all to see people incorporating these kind of fantastic fantasy inflected technologies into their lives, whether it's people who have kind of totally given up on human relationships for parasocial ones with idols or anime characters. Like we saw that all happening in Japan. Now it's kind of common abroad too.
Yeah.
So I would not be surprised if Japan is not the country that invents the best robot or the first robot, but it might perfect the way that robots are incorporated into our lives. It certainly did that in our fantasy lives. So
for sure.
I kind of like everything else Japan does. They don't start it, but they sure do perfect it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's like they didn't invent AI, but maybe they're going to be the ones that incorporate it in the way that we all do in the future. Like we're all going to be lonely people talking to our waifus and husbandos on our on our cell phones in the future. What a glorious, beautiful, bright future this sounds like, doesn't it?
Wasn't that Joaquin Phoenix in that movie, Her?
Yeah.
It's basically like that.
Yes.
Right?
No, it was totally Her. Her is a dystopia, too. This is the thing. People like, oh, Her. So this is, to me, Hiroko and I had just experienced this beautiful mountain. Like we climbed to the top of it and it's there's technology in this fact. You're looking at your GPS and stuff to make sure you don't go off track or whatever. But it was a very get back to nature sort of thing. So coming down to the base of the mountain and having this dude like carrying on a conversation with his AI waifu was kind of, oh, well, we're back in civilization now, I guess, kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, on that note.
Yes. When are you going to replace each other with AI waifu husbando kind of situation here? When am I going to come on and I'm going to be talking only to AI?
Oh,
never.
I don't know.
Probably not.
Yes.
I mean, we technically probably are already AI because we're not a video podcast. We're a listening podcast. So we don't really have a face to the name.
Our voices could be fake this whole time. No one even knows.
Well, I promise to boycott this podcast the minute they replace you with AI. How does that sound?
Oh, thanks.
I appreciate that. Well, so hey, do you have anything else that you're working on? I know we kind of wrapped up and got to the finish line of our robot race.
No, I'm just doing the usual. I'm writing. I'm keeping up my Substack. My newsletter is at blog.pureinventionbook.com. You can always find me there. My website, mattalt.com, always has my latest articles and stuff that are out. I'm still here in Japan, surrounded by robots writing. I probably will be forever. So
you're gonna get one of those assistant robots to come in there and help you write as your hands are failing you.
I want an assistant robot to help me dust my robot collection.
Oh, that'd be nice.
That's what I want an assistant robot for. I don't want it to help me write. God,
you might have to call in one of those telecommuting robots.
Yeah, somebody like some dude in Eastern Europe actually dusting my robots. What a world! What a world we live in.
Well, listen, if you have any of those model Gundams, you might want a robot that's like very light to the touch, because let me just say, I tried to dust one of mine off and it didn't end very well.
Yes, they are. The model kits are fragile. Maybe we can hire a robot to build our robots for us so that we don't.
That would be awesome, because I hate building them.
The whole point of it is,
when I had more time when I was like 15, I really enjoyed the meditative aspect of it. But yeah, now I just want it to be built.
Yeah.
Well,
I bought like a model kit for something. I bought it last summer, and I'm like, I'm gonna do that in the summer. No.
It really does take a long time.
It depends. Some of them are simpler, some of them are less simple.
This is a little bit more intense, so I don't know.
Intense robots. I love it.
All right. Well, Matt, as always, thank you so much for coming on and joining us. This is a hoot. A hoot and holler.
Or a beep.
Yep.
It's a robot thing. It's more like a beep, I think. We should
bleep
say.
bloop.
Well, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure. You know where to find me. I'll be transforming robots here in Tokyo.
Well, if you ever transform into New Orleans, let us know. You know where to find
Absolutely.
us.
No, I'd love to go back to New Orleans. Absolutely. So we'll keep you posted.
Sounds good, man. And that wraps up our deep dive into Japan's greatest, longest-running situationship with robots. From Astro Boy to Gundam, from rubber suit heroes to real-world robotics, it's kind of wild how Japan keeps incorporating yesterday's sci-fi into tomorrow's everyday life. A huge thank you to Matt Alt for coming back onto the show and nerding out with us for a little bit. If you want to go even deeper into how Japan turns fantasy into reality, definitely check out his book, Pure Invention, his newsletter, and Pure Tokyoscope podcast with Patrick Macias. We'll have all that linked out in the show notes. Trust me, they're required reading and listening for anyone who loves this stuff. All right, time to power down the mech and bring it on home. As always, thank you so much for tuning into Krewe Japan Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you have a few extra seconds to spare, leave us a rating and review, and even share this episode with your favorite robot companion. Every single one of those 5-star ratings and reviews helps others discover Krewe of Japan and join our global crew. Any and all support is incredibly appreciated. Have robots from Japan made an impact on your life? Share with us on social media. Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, X. Just search for Krewe of Japan Podcast to stay in the loop with future episodes, upcoming Japan Society events, and other Japan-related content. That's KREWEOFJAPAN. Or maybe you want to reach out to us directly. Send us an email at kreweofjapanpodcast@gmail.com. We'd really love to hear from you. But that's it for today. Until next time, bleep bloop. Looking to start your own podcast and don't know what platform to use? Tell me about it. When we started the Krewe of Japan podcast, we tried a bunch of the big name recording platforms, but always came back to the one we're still currently using to this day, Zencastr. Zencastr is now the all-in-one solution making podcasting easy. In addition to its high audio and video quality for podcast production, Zencastr provides a full suite of production tools to record, produce, and publish studio quality content from the comfort of your home. Just log in through your browser and start recording. It's that simple. For us, we simply send out links to our guests and they join the lobby. But before you know it, it's all done and you have your studio quality audio and up to 4K video right there ready for you, right when you finish. The best part is having their multi-layered backups to ensure that your recordings are in the highest quality, regardless of anyone's internet connection stability. With Zencastr's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcasts in one place and distribute to all the major destinations. It's really that easy. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code Krewe of Japan, KREWEOFJAPAN, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's your time to share your story.